Greetings, One Troy family. My name is Cornelius Godfrey, and I'm pleased to welcome you to Troy School District's virtual celebration of the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Our theme for the day is More Than a Dream, and we hope you'll be inspired by the conversations, images, and artistry to do your part in making Dr. King's dream a reality. We begin with a series of speech excerpts read by the students leaders of the Troy High School Black Student Union. And in keeping with the theme of More Than a Dream, these students dug deep into the archives of Dr. King to find powerful words that still resonate today. Please join Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as read by Jordan Hoyle, Malachi Nix, and Samway Reed.
The following are excerpts from a speech Dr. King gave called Facing a New Age, delivered at an Emancipation Day rally in 1957. But there comes a time when people get tired. There comes a time when people get tired of being trampled over by the iron feet of oppression. There comes a time that people get tired of being plunged across the abyss of exploitation, where they experience the bleakness of nagging despair. There comes a time when people get tired of being pushed out of the glittering sunlight of life's July and left standing in the piercing chill of an alpine November. So these people became tired, and as a result of their tiredness, they decided to rise up and protest. And as a result of their protesting, about 1,300,000,000 of the 1,600,000,000 colored peoples in today's world are free. They have broken loose from these colonial powers. They have their own governments, their own economic systems. They have broken loose from the Egypt of colonialism. They're moving through the wilderness of adjustment toward the promised land of cultural integration. And as they look back, they see forces of colonialism and imperialism dying. The old order of colonialism is passing away, and the new order of freedom and equality is coming to being.
But with the coming of anything new, there are new responsibilities, new challenges. The new order brings with it new responsibilities. What are some of these challenges that stand before us as we confront the new order, which is inevitably coming? I would say that the first real challenge is to rise above the narrow confines of our individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity. You see, this new age is an age of geographical togetherness. No nation can live alone now. No individual can live alone. We must all learn to live together, or we all die together.
There's another basic challenge which stands before us as we face this emerging new world. We are challenged to achieve excellency in our various fields of endeavor. You see, in this new age, doors will be opening that were not opened in the past. The young people of this generation will have opportunities that foreparents didn't have. And the greatest challenge before us is to be ready to enter these doors as they open. Ralph Waldo Emerson said in a lecture back in 1871 that if a man can write a better book, or preach a better sermon, or make a better mousetrap than his neighbor, even if he builds his house in the woods, the world will make a beaten path to his door. That will be increasingly true. That will be true even in this age, and we must be ready and prepared in all areas.
Powerful words. We encourage you to find some time today to read the remaining portion of Facing the Challenges of a New Age. Thanks again to our exceptional THS students. And now we move forward to the world of art to explore how Dr. King's dream is made real with paint and canvas. For that, we'll enlist the help of rising local artist and curator, Jonathan Harris. Mr. Harris recently earned the national spotlight for his piece entitled Critical Race Theory, which depicts his interpretation of the current discourse regarding history, education, and the graduate level legal framework of the same name. Welcome, friends, and thank you for joining us in this celebration of Dr. King holiday. We are happy to have with us artist and curator Jonathan Harris. Welcome, Jonathan.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're really excited to have you here and excited that you're having the great exposure that you're having based on your piece. And we wanted to have some conversation about how you view yourself and your art and where you place that in the realm of activism. Jonathan, do you consider yourself to be an activist?
I'm an artist first. I have been called a protest artist before, but I'm really just painting the times. So if you do want to call me an activist, I'll take that. But my art is really just centered around the African-American story in America through my point of view, through my lens.
And I really have a strong appreciation for that, having viewed your art and recognized that there are elements of like popular culture and social issues, but there's also deeply personal things. I wonder, how has your art helped you to navigate some of the more difficult times of life, particularly like the last few years? We've seen, protests and, violence against the Capitol. We've seen unarmed Black men and women, face gunshots from citizens and police officers, all the things, the pandemic. How has your art helped you to walk through these times?
Good question. I got a two-part answer for that. Very first, just being who I am, looking at that type of stuff is very difficult. Just for me, I take it all in emotionally, physically, and when I do decide to paint something, I'm very locked in, and all of that outside noise, I just don't hear it. So when I'm painting, it's almost like therapy for me. I just get a chance to just focus on just what I'm focusing on. My phone is on Do Not Disturb. I'm listening to something real soft, not being bothered. And then I feel like the pieces that I do work on at that time, they are socially conscious, and they just bring awareness to what's going on in the world right now. So it's kind of like, okay, the art is helping me, but then I'm still helping the world. So I just feel good about that. And when people see it, they appreciate it, and they think about how they can actually be better. So I appreciate that.
Joe, I really appreciate your connection to the trauma that these things have caused for you, and how your art has had a therapeutic impact. And I would like to say that I think that has, an element of truth even for the people who view your art. I think, in thinking about the pieces that I've seen from you, I can definitely tell that you have a sense of validation when you look at something that so clearly articulates in visual form what you've been thinking or feeling in relation to what is happening in the world. So I would like to congratulate you on being able to, master the ability to heal yourself and also offer healing for others. That's amazing.
Right.
And has that been the case for you for your whole life? Like, where did this start? Like, how did your journey as an artist begin?
Good question. Well, I've been drawing my whole life. I would just draw, in church, not paying attention as a kid growing up, and just got a little better at drawing. And, my mother, she put me in art school in high school, and just in different art programs. And I went to, to college, and I was studying graphic design. And even during that period, I had just started to I actually just picked up a brush for the first time, I believe, in 2018 or 19.
Wow.
And at that time, I didn't know how to paint at all. I just knew how to draw. And just painting like celebrities and things like that, just stuff that I seen on Instagram or I thought that people would like. And then I got connected with this group in Detroit called the Detroit Fine Arts Breakfast Club. And directors are Harold Braggs and Henry Harper. And Henry, he kind of just took me under his wing and said, what you paint is beautiful, but let's go down to the DIA and I'm gonna show you what's on the wall, and you tell me what you think. And he just gave me some really good knowledge about just painting the times and painting what you see around you. And those are the things that's gonna last, and those are the things that galleries and museums want to see. And so I just did my history, did more research and things about that I'm passionate about. And I'm passionate about my people and my life and my friends and family and everybody, but especially people that look like me. So I just, I want to tell our story from my point of view, and something that, lasts the test of time, and, from generations to generations to be passed down. So that's what I do in my life.
That's real. And I appreciate your thinking about like legacy and how your art will impact future generations. What role do you imagine your work, Critical Race Theory, playing in the national conversation on American history and education and society in general. How do you see your work landing in that conversation?
Well, I hope that, I know a lot of people paying attention to this piece right now. It's been shared all across the world. And I painted it to bring awareness to what was going on. And unless things change, then, this painting it's just a painting. Unless like the work that needs to go after this was painted doesn't happen, then we kind of just in the same spot. So I really just want to bring awareness to the issue of the critical race theory and the changing of, words and literature and important things. And so that's just what I hope this piece does to the world.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing how your piece and your work in general, but also works from artists who have been, writing plays and writing novels and writing, screen treatments that have been adapted into television shows, are really mirroring the times in very creative ways, but they're ways that have forced us to have a conversation. So one example that just popped in my mind while you were talking was the HBO series Watchmen. And I'm not sure if we've talked about Watchmen before, but I know that very first episode that featured scenes that depicted the Tulsa Race Massacre, like that brought that event into popular conversation. So I think some segments of the community were aware and were having, dialogue about what happened in Tulsa. But a large number of American citizens had been unaware and had never been exposed. And that makes me think about your piece, because we have a mechanism by which we teach things that have happened in this country so that citizens might be aware and that we might, repeat successes and avoid past mistakes. And what your piece does so eloquently in the way that it's depicting, the act of painting over the giants of the civil rights and Black liberation movements, it shows what's at stake. We could have large swaths of our history disappear in the same way that many folks live their entire lives. Even some folks in Oklahoma, some I've heard even in Tulsa, having never learned of the history that happened there. And I think it's amazing that as an artist, you've taken hold of the need for us to think about those hard history moments and make them an important part of our current conversation. Talk about some of the responses that you've gotten to this piece.
All right. So I've been getting a lot of emails, text messages from numbers I've never seen before. Been getting a lot of direct messages. I don't think I'll ever be able to go through these Instagram messages ever in my lifetime. It's so many. And most of them I try to, get to just to respond personally to some people. And it's some real heartfelt messages that people sent, not, something that's just real small. But so I just like the responses is sometimes it's overwhelming, but I feel like that's a good thing because this piece has touched so many people. And I really just really wanted to bring awareness to this issue. And yeah.
You did it. You absolutely did it. And, the term viral, especially during these days of COVID variants, has taken on a different tone. Are you at all conflicted about the popularity of this piece? Like, are there moments where the weight of this becoming a piece of pop culture at this point now. Does that challenge you as a person who wants to remain a private citizen? Does it challenge you as an artist that wants to be known for a body of work and not a singular piece?
Not at all. I welcome it. I've always said that I want the world's attention when it's time for me to have a solo show. And I feel like this piece, it really just set me up really good. So when I do decide to have a solo show, the world will be watching. And I welcome everything that comes with this piece. I believe that I did it in a very creative way, a very colorful way, a way that hasn't been done before, and in a way that's digestible. It's not about violence. It's no blood or gore or any of that. We just have our figures and a figure that depicts America and white paint. So, and
I think that's a part of the genius that people have been appreciating is it takes a complex issue, which, just not for the purposes of this conversation, but involves the conflating of a lot of different issues with a very specific area of study reserved for graduate legal students with history that we know not only needs to be taught, but that is probably not taught well enough to our youngest learners. So I appreciate how you take, the complex controversy and you bring it down to the simple and scary outcome that could result if like you say, folks don't take action. When I think about your path as an artist and even our personal connection as being family members, I appreciate that as a young artist, there are a lot of lessons that you've learned that have shaped your path and helped you to mature in the way that you have. I wonder if there might be some things that you could share with young artists who see themselves as activists and are hoping to affect change in the worlds that they live in. How can you either inspire them or give them some wisdom that has proven helpful for you?
All right, good question. I would tell them first to practice. That's the only way that you're going to get better at the art. You have to love it. So you have to dedicate time to it. You got to tell people no. It's parties you're not going to be able to go to. It's events you're not going to be able to go to. It's a family you're not going to be able to see. And I will also tell them to be honest about what they are passionate about. Are you passionate about social issues? I would tell them to do the history of these issues and do something that's creative, and it'll catch the world's attention. Just be honest and sincere about what you care about and love, and paint it or draw it or do it digitally. But if at first you just really not passionate about it, that's the main thing. I would just say definitely be passionate about it.
And I can hear it in your voice, Jonathan. I can hear it and I can see it in your work that this is something that you are passionate about, and this is an honest reflection of where you are. And I imagine that not only the advice of folks who've been pouring into you, but also experience has taught you the importance of honesty, particularly when you're dealing with art that scratches the surface of some heavy issues. Did you have any moments where at some points your work felt less than honest?
I would say yes, because like I said, I was just paying celebrities. I was going on Google, typing in popular people to paint and things like that, and it just didn't do nothing for me. Like just my soul. I mean, it looked good. It still looked good on the people who collected those pieces' walls, but like when I look at it, I don't feel anything. When I look at my art, I want to feel something. Like these pieces behind me, when I look at them, I feel something because I know like how much I put into it. I know the meanings behind it. I know the ideas that went behind it. I know like just building it up from the ground up, how I got it from nothing to here, it just means a lot more. And then, when people like it or appreciate it or even purchase it, that just does something else, for me, just personally, knowing that somebody essentially just bought my crazy idea that I just used some paint to create, just on a piece of cloth. That's a real fulfilling feeling.
Yeah, it's amazing, and you think about the things that are the most important to you. And as you're saying this, I'm looking at a picture over your shoulder of a gentleman in a blue shirt. I wonder if you could tell us about that piece and what might be the significance that is coming through on the canvas for you.
Yeah, this painting. This is a picture of my dad. I believe this picture was taken at my niece's high school graduation open house. And so I took that picture and I decided to put a cape on him just to represent how I viewed him as a hero of mine, just how I see him, navigate through life. Never seen him smoke, drink, cuss, yell, fight. Any of that, he kind of just take a lot. And even like after the death of my mom, like he kind of just took that and kept going. And lost other family members, he just took it and kept going. And just me, I don't know how I would have ever dealt with that, or anybody else in the world would have dealt with that. And he's still standing strong. So that's one of the pieces to show him appreciation for how I felt about him. So I put the bricks behind him because he was into masonry and bricks and construction. And then I got the little flowers coming down. That's to represent my mother, showing them love from heaven. And those flowers are purple, which are her favorite color.
That's amazing, Jonathan. And thanks. I think there's so much in that painting. And I feel blessed to know the gentleman in the painting, but I imagine even folks who don't know can recognize the depth in a picture of an older Black gentleman wearing a cape. The amazing feat of becoming an older gentleman while Black in America. Absolutely. Like the heroism that comes from being the kind of gentleman who makes it to that age in a society that is often hostile just because of the way he looks, the way you look, the way I look. I could see that piece speaking just as much depth and volume as any other work you've done. On top of the level of love and devotion that I see you putting in based on your connection with your father. Jonathan, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us, and I appreciate being able to connect with not only you as an artist, but the history that undergirds the work that you're doing. Really excited for you to show the world more and hopeful for what is in store for you.
Thank you. I appreciate you for having me.
I looked at the world from awakening eyes and a Black face, and this is what I see, this fenced-off narrow space assigned to me. I looked in at the silly walls through dark eyes and a dark face, and this is what I know, that all these walls oppression builds will have to go. I look at my own body, with eyes no longer blind, and I see that my own hands can make the world that is in my mind. Then let us hurry, comrades, the road to find. I Look at the World by Langston Hughes.
What an insightful look into the world of art as activism. Thank you, Jonathan, for sharing your time with the One Troy family today. We also offer our sincere thanks to Michelle Fadasiv, Brianna Dalziel, Lillian Jesse Shirk, Brooke Malone, Christina Barbov, and Sadid Islam of Baker Middle School for sharing their visual art with us. Thanks also to Xavier Newell for his recitation of I Look at the World by Langston Hughes. Our next conversation engages leaders from multiple areas of the Troy community. Whether as educators, faith leaders, or elected officials, leadership plays an important role in making Dr. King's dream more than a dream. Please enjoy the discussion with thoughts inspired by Dr. King's 1963 Letters from Birmingham Jail. Hello and welcome to our virtual celebration of Dr. King and his legacy. We are happy to be celebrating him in Troy School District. My name is Cornelius Godfrey, and we're joined by leaders in our community. I'd like to welcome Mayor Ethan Baker, State Representative Padma Kupa, Dr. Macheski, School Superintendent of Troy School District, Dr. Teresa Brooks, City Council Person in Troy, and Pastor Bob Cornwall, police chaplain and former pastor and interfaith Troy area leader. Thank you all for being with us today, and we're really excited to talk about how our roles and our opportunities for leadership intersect with the dream and vision of Dr. King. So let's begin. Dr. King, in his Letters from a Birmingham Jail, said this: "Let us all hope that the dark clouds of racial prejudice will soon pass away and the deep fog of misunderstanding will be lifted from our fear-drenched communities. And in some not too distant tomorrow, the radiant stars of love and brotherhood will shine over our great nation with all their scintillating beauty." If you would please share what your estimation is of our advancement toward this hope that Dr. King had, and what might be the things that are pushing us toward or keeping us from achieving that hope.
So I'm going to go ahead and sort of lead on this. I think that the fact that we are here with a diverse group of people, a lawyer, a doctor, and an engineer, a pastor, and educators, and we have different ethnic backgrounds, we have different religious backgrounds, and that we are representative of people who want to celebrate the legacy and the actions that we need to take to fulfill Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy. I think this is why Troy is special, that our school district, our community, our city come together and with such great representation here.
I'll jump off from there. I think what State Representative Kupa said is absolutely right on many levels. And I think that we're very lucky here in Troy that we do, I think, a good job of working hard to continue to advance Dr. King's cause. As shown here by having the school district and the city come together with in this panel and among the other countless years of Martin Luther King Day events the school district and the city have done. I think that's great. I feel as the mayor very proud of this city, and I look around at other communities in the country, and I think, well, we really are ahead in many ways, recognizing obviously we can never take that for granted. But I think education is a big component of that. I think Troy is an educated community and really open to learning about these things and these injustices and finding a way to move forward and advance those causes.
Ethan, I'll jump in there as well. I've been very fortunate to serve now as superintendent in the district for going on 9 years, and I've been in the district for 14 years. And what has struck me from the very beginning when I came to Troy was just the willingness to engage staff administratively, and more importantly, our students. They are very involved and want to be involved, and that level of engagement is contagious in a school community. And when you have young people that are willing to drive issues forward that they feel strongly about, I think speaks highly to the opportunities that they've been provided and the community in which they live. And so we certainly are moving, I believe, at least moving forward. Doesn't mean we don't have challenges. Challenges certainly exist, and I know we'll have a chance to talk a little bit about what some of those challenges are.
Teresa, I don't know if you want to go next, but
you can go.
Okay. As I was thinking about the question and the mention that the question emerges out of King's letter from a Birmingham jail, and knowing that the target audience of that set of letters was moderate white Christian pastors who were telling Dr. King to be quiet, basically, and be non-confrontational, and and he had just addressed them and called them to account that they had not fully stood for what was for justice. And so I think about that, and I'm thinking about that Dr. King was assassinated. I was 10 years old and into baseball cards and not paying attention to the realities of the world around me. That we have made much progress, but we're still not where I think Dr. King would hope we would be by now, all of these years later. And so it just reminds me that we have so much more work to do. And too often we live in our silos, and we may have our friendships that cross ethnic and religious boundaries, but we still live in silos. And so we just need to be always aware of that. Maybe, our schools are maybe more diverse than our larger body of residents, but we still have a lot of work to do. And that just remind me kind of who Dr. King addressed in those letters.
Yeah. I guess from my perspective, we definitely have made progress. I mean, if you look over our history for the past decades and centuries, we've definitely made progress as a society, but we definitely are not where, Dr. King envisioned us to be. And progress has been slower than I think many of us would like to see. There are events that, I think, wow, we've come so far. And then other events happen. And I think, wow, there's so far to go. So we have so much further to go. And so, it can definitely be frustrating and challenging, and you go through kind of ups and downs. As a person of color, I've gone through emotional roller coasters, especially in the past few years with, George Floyd and a lot of the events that have taken place. But I am very encouraged by, this younger generation of younger people that really seem to really want to push and see a change and see more equity and inclusion in their society. And that really does give me a lot of hope for our future.
Thank you all. And Dr. Brooks, you bring up a really great point about our young people and the way that they have chosen to engage, particularly recently. And I think what we're seeing is students taking several notes from Dr. King's playbook and seeking to create some tension. And I think history is telling sometimes some conflicting stories about Dr. King. They'll cast his methods of nonviolent direct action as being non-confrontational, but he actually described nonviolent direct action this way. Dr. King said, nonviolent direct action seeks to create such a crisis and establish such creative tensions that a community has to consistently refuse to negotiate, is forced now to confront that issue. It seeks to dramatize the issue so that it can no longer be ignored. If you would talk about some ways that our folks have shown up in this community that have embodied that idea of creating some healthy tension so that we might address something that might have gone unaddressed otherwise.
I can start on this one if you like. I no problem. June of 2020, there was a peaceful protest march in the city of Troy. There are actually two in the same week. We tend to talk more about the second one, I think, and I will for this purpose. But it was essentially student or former student driven. Some Athens grads got together, and first you talk about confrontation a little bit, and the word confrontation is tough for me because I'm confrontation averse. I don't like it. I like people to come together and smile and make things better, but I realize that that's not always possible. But anything when you're having 1,500 to 2,000 people of all walks of life from this community walking down Big Beaver, our main road, and shutting it down, it's confrontational, right? It's changed the way of life for everything living along that street at the time. And what it really did for me was it opened my eyes to things a little bit differently. Obviously, at that point, it was George Floyd had hit the national news and everything going on with that, and I was feeling pretty comfortable that we didn't have those type of issues here specifically in Troy, right? And I still believe we have a fantastic police department, we have a fantastic community, and we don't have a lot of the issues that a lot of other communities do. But it didn't dawn on me that there could still be students or former students from our Troy schools, students of color who had a different experience and a different story to tell. And so had they not planned that march, and it was peaceful, and I was walking there as well, and I think it was a fantastic thing, but had they not planned that, it wouldn't have opened my eyes to it and had me look at things differently, as I've tried to ever since then. And it is confrontational to have people gathering in that large of a group just in general. When you have a huge group of people, it can be intimidating to people around you because it is confrontational, but it was very effective in opening my eyes, and I'm sure others in the community as well. And I hope that it did some good for the students who started it. And I'm sure there's been positive things that have come out of it from the school district standpoint too, because I know the school district was so heavily involved in working with those students and accepting it. I mean, it started at Athens High, right on the school property. So that's one form of confrontation that I think has had a big impact on my life here in the city of Troy.
Bob and I walked that June 2020 together, and one of the things that I thought was really important was that I saw a lot of people who would not have been out addressing these issues, who would not have become activists, but that gave them an opportunity to be part of something bigger than themselves. Mm-hmm. I think that's something that we all need sometimes, is to be part of a movement when we know that, all of us, I think, are called to help the other, people of faith, people of no faith, people of different faiths, and that so many different people came together to help address the issue and to raise awareness and to stand in solidarity. Now, what are the next steps? And I think that's where the confronting the issues without being confrontational, because I too don't like the coming from Hindu tradition and the land of nonviolence that got rid of the British without resorting to a revolution. I come with that kind of underpinning. And so it's really amazing that we can confront and deal with a problem without being confrontational. And I think that speaking with people like Bob and Charlotte Summers, another retired pastor in the community, really helps center me. And I think that having these resources in the community, this is something that we're very fortunate also, is that we have a lot of different ways of connecting to history, and being able to not only have a good education system, but also the support services in the community and the organizations in the community that supplement those, whether it's the Troy Interfaith Group or whether it's, doing a middle school field trip for Civil War days to the Troy Historical Society and hearing Sojourner Truth in reenactment. There's so many pieces of the puzzle that make Troy special and open us up to, in the words of the Troy Interfaith Group, gather, grow, and give.
I would also like to say that, the Black Lives Matter march also really stood out to me as well. I was impressed by a few things with it. One was that the majority of the people that marched were actually not Black. And it was really just a very, very diverse group of individuals who recognized and acknowledged, that there was a problem, that there was an issue that needed to be addressed. And just the large volume of people. It was just so many people that attended. It was so well attended that that really struck me as well. And then one other thing, I marched and walked in it with my daughters, was just hearing the conversations around me. I heard some, these were I think they must have been high schoolers, but they were talking about different scenarios, and they were saying, well, what if X, Y, and Z happened, or you heard this happen, how would you respond to it? And just kind of hearing the dialogue between them, that nobody had to prompt them. It wasn't a teacher. It wasn't, anybody facilitating this. They were just kind of having a discussion about how they would address inequities and what's the best thing to do and how do you respond. And that really, really, struck me. And I was really, really encouraged by hearing, these young people talk about these issues.
Yeah, thank you all so much. And I appreciate your connection to that recent community event where students were able to show just how impacted by the messages of nonviolent direct action they have been, and to put those into motion by showing their entire Troy community that they're not going to sit silently and allow an injustice to happen. And that speaks to Dr. King's often quoted statement that injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. But I'd like to engage you all in some thinking about the statement that followed that. He went on to say that anyone who lives inside the U.S. can never be considered an outsider anywhere in the country. So with respect to your roles, in what ways might some of the constituents that you serve see themselves or feel as outsiders in the Troy community? And what might we do as leaders to help outsiders feel more included in our larger community?
I'll jump in here first, Cornelius, if I could. We in Troy, I think we're about 28% foreign born now. And it shows in our community when you're out and about, but something I really struggle with in city government is how to make everybody in our city feel like they're part of our community, whether that's getting their voices heard as it comes to government relations, or just not feeling like they have to stay in their own little bubbles inside the community. It's a struggle. I think we're predominantly still, here I'm a white male Christian, right? And I'm the mayor of the city. I do my best to try to engage other faith traditions and other ethnicities and try to make it known that I represent everybody. But I still do think we struggle as we're predominantly driven by Judeo-Christian values in government, not just here in Troy, but throughout the country. And I really want to find a way to recognize that while I think that's great, and I don't want anyone who's a white Christian to feel like we're trying to take anything away from anybody, but we do want to recognize that there's a huge segment of our population and our residents who make up the fabric of our city and do so much good for our city that maybe they're not being represented in the best way always, or even, and I think we're blind to it a little bit. And I hate to think that we're othering people without really realizing it. From the government relations standpoint, it's so important to me and I know everybody on city council too, that we want everybody to feel like they can come to us when they have an issue or when we want to go to them and talk about something that's maybe coming up in our city and how to best get that engagement of the community. We struggle with that. And I know there's some hesitation and some backgrounds because of the countries they've come from originally. There's whether it's corruption or it's just a different style of government. We're trying to bring everybody along and to get everybody together here in the city of Troy. So I don't know the answers to that and how best to do it, but I'm always looking for suggestions and maybe this panel can help. But it's tough. And it's something that I do think about quite a bit because we're not, Troy loves to talk about how diverse it is. Yes, we're diverse. That's absolutely true. We have a diverse population, but I want us all to be able to come together when we need to and want to, not saying that we always have to, but and feel comfortable in doing that. And it's a struggle for sure.
Ethan, I appreciate you saying that. And, whenever people talk about the city and the diversity within the city, I come to the realization that within our school district, we're closing in on 40% non-Caucasian individuals. And so we are very quickly becoming a school district with no majority. And it's interesting to think about, what does that mean? What does that look like? And when I think about where I used to think about diversity, and praise the fact that we have a diverse community and a diverse school district, I really shifted that towards thinking about equity. What place do people play within our school district? And to have any person, to have a young lady come to a board meeting and say that she did not feel like she belonged in our school district, that really struck me as a superintendent, someone who was responsible ultimately for the school district. And to have somebody say that, a person of color say that, when I would like very much to believe we are a district that is inclusive, it really struck me. And I had to ask myself, do we have the right processes, policies, structures in place to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to feel that they belong? And we had to ask ourselves some really tough questions and look ourselves in the mirror and make sure that we weren't just talking about those things, that we were actually doing, that we are actually doing those things. And those are tough realizations to come to, but it's it's when we allow ourselves to come to that realization that we realize we have more work to do and we can push ourselves towards doing that work. And so when I think about people that belong, I recognize that we may not have always been a place where folks really felt like they belonged, but I certainly feel as if we're doing the things necessary now to be that place where everyone has a sense of belonging, sees themselves in our policies, see themselves in our staff, they see themselves in the curriculum, they see themselves in the types of books that we read and so forth and so on. That I think is what Dr. King would have wanted for us. That's where he would have wanted us to be, even though it's taken us a little while to get there. I think we're moving in the right direction, and I'm pleased with the work we're doing. It's not without its challenges, but anything worth doing is certainly worth the challenge.
So my two predecessors were two white men, and Dr. Macheski's two predecessors were two women, but we've changed that, I think, by being in these roles, he as an educator, me as an elected official representing this community. When you see it, you can be it. And to see more young people imagine themselves in roles that there may not have been people that looked like them. I think that's really important. And so for me, I feel very blessed that I am the representative for this district, because when those school children have been able to come to Lansing, or when the high schoolers come, work with me during the summer to learn what I do as a representative, it's really cool for them to see someone who looks like them, right? That first autograph that I got from a fourth grader in Lansing, it will always stay with me, because she was hyper, she was touching everything. The teacher kept on calling her some nickname. And then when she pulled out her book and asked me for her autograph, and she looked just like I had at that age, with two little braids, oiled, with a little, bindi on her forehead, the dot on her forehead. And she asked me for my autograph. I looked at her and I go, is your name Nivi or is it Nivedita? And just being able to recognize her name and know that, and she was visible, right? And I think that's one of the other things that so often as a person of color, we may be invisible. And I know as a woman in engineering, I struggled with that too. It was not a profession where many women, even today, when I graduated, I was the only woman in mechanical engineering. And to make sure that we give opportunities to people who are underrepresented, I think is something that we strive to do, and we need to continue to do it. And as far as, I struggle within the Indian American community to get them out, to get them to advocate for themselves, the immigrant communities, but they're not used to doing that in their old countries, because of colonization or whatever other reasons. And so, having conversations like this and having people like all of us who are willing to bring people in, is really important.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, being seen as an outsider, I mean, there's so many groups, and depending on the scenario, they can be seen as outsiders. You know, it can be based on where your country of origin, your gender, your sexual orientation, your race, your religion, you know. So there's so many people. I'm sure most of us can probably think of times in our life where we have felt like an outsider at some point for a various reason or another. And so, but I think that, you know, it always is a challenge to try to include everybody and try to bring equity to everybody. But I think obviously the first step is recognizing that there's a problem, acknowledging it, and beginning a discussion on how to move forward. You know, we may not always have all the answers. We may try different things and it may not work out, you know, but as long as the intention, I think, is there and we're striving to move forward, I think that that's what is, you know, most important. But yeah, it's always a challenge when it's such a diverse group of people with so many different issues, you know, or concerns, to really bring everybody to the table and give everybody, you know, a seat at the table and a voice, and make everyone feel included. Because what makes one person feel included may not be the same for somebody else. But always really trying to do your best to reach out to the communities, connect with different people, you know, people that may not look like you, people that may not think like you. Always try to make those connections, I think, will bring a positive change.
I think I'll add one last piece into this, and I think that as I listen and I'm in agreement with what all has been said, I think, you know, my own experience as a pastor, especially of a congregation that had a number of gay and lesbian and transgender members, is the sense of a need for space that's safe. And so inclusion is one thing, but for a lot of people, it's the safe space. And it may be whatever. For LGBTQ people, that's search, especially in faith communities. But people of color, I mean, all of us at some point, I recently read a book on autism and opened my eyes to things I didn't even contemplate. So there are a lot of, and what people need and are expecting and are hoping for in the community is a sense of safety. And so I think we always have to keep that in mind. That's not just being other, but it's feeling safe when we feel that we're other.
Yeah, and thank you so much for your thoughts and in picking up that idea of safety. I know that many of our marginalized community members do struggle to meet with a sense of safety in spaces, whether they are at churches or in our neighborhoods or in communities, struggling to find that sense of belonging and that sense that there is a safety from the risk associated with being different. But I'd like to pose a question for you all. In considering the risks that might be associated with advocating for marginalized groups, I wonder if you all are thinking through the ways that you might be navigating your roles and any of the inherent risks that might come with, speaking up for those who don't have a voice. Dr. King said this, said, all too many others have been more cautious than courageous and have remained silent behind the anesthetizing security of stained glass windows. And in that moment, I think what he's speaking about is the relative political safety of not mentioning the concerns of marginalized or minority community members, and the relative safety of not bringing issues to the table that might cause some confrontation or controversy. How are you in your role experiencing navigating the political risks involved and bringing up the needs of folks when you understand that it might rock the boat?
I will speak as a pastor.
Pastor Cornwall, good. You go.
This is a conversation that colleagues have all the time. We are living, our ability to put food on the table and such is dependent upon the giving of our congregants. And in many of our congregations, folks are pretty diverse in their political and other forms of thinking. And being, like Mayor Baker said, confrontation averse as I am, it's easy to simply say what the majority of the congregation wants to hear and stay away from those important questions and conversations. So I think that's something that we all face, whether we're a political leader or especially religious leaders face that in their congregations, that we are always being asked to do more than we sometimes feel comfortable doing. And so I have stayed quiet at times and I've pushed the button at times. I will admit that I've gotten fired a couple of times, so which my family is not pleased with. But fortunately, my most recent congregation actually embraced the message. We were on the same wavelength with the message, so I was grateful for that. But it is a difficult challenge, I think, for all of us, that we would rather skate by and not take those positions that would cause confrontation.
I'm going to say, as a parent, as a mother, and I'm a Leo, so I guess that goes with the territory, but like, I don't want my children to face the injustices, even the ones that I'm willing to take. And I think that has always empowered me to take on the role to confront something. It's in the first bill that I introduced in the legislature, which is to help a vulnerable adult protect her from online sexual predators. It is what involved me in the civic space with the Ethnic Issues Advisory Board, because I saw a friend of mine's son is named Osama and how he felt after 9/11. It's what enabled me to speak out at City Council around the National Day of Prayer event that wanted to exclude those of us who did not believe the Nicene Creed. This is a country built on its First Amendment, which is freedom of religion. Why would you have a city-sponsored event that didn't honor that First Amendment? And so I want all children, not just mine, now that they're adults, they can do their own thing, but all children in our district should always have access to opportunity. That is what brought many generations of immigrants here. Not all. Some were forced here, and I understand that. But I think it's really important that as adults, we have a responsibility to those who are vulnerable. And that is what motivates me to confront. And hopefully I do it without being confrontational.
Padma has a very different experience than I do. And Teresa, we, as the elected officials on this panel, I think, and I'll say all of us here do a good job of not making, the next election about the only things we focus on, right? And if we're more worried about what's going to happen at the next election day than doing what's right for people who are being harmed or not dealing with injustices, I think we're doing a bad job at that. And I think it's so important, to know our roles also. Sometimes, Teresa and I are on city government, which is a very different type of government than what's happening in Lansing on a number of levels. but that doesn't mean that in some things it's really not appropriate for the mayor and city council, Troy, to jump into because we can't actually do anything about it. That said, sometimes it's also important to use our voices because we are, we're the largest city in Oakland County. People know Troy. If we can make a difference and have an impact in some place, sometimes it is appropriate to use it. But finding that line and walking that line of what makes the most sense to actually do more good than harm is the struggle. Sometimes, and we talk about confrontation. I'm non-confrontational. I'm probably not an activist by nature. I mean, there are activists who just go, and that's what their passion is, and that's what they do. For me, I look at that and think, gosh, you might be turning some people off in the process because you're not allowing them to sit and reflect on some of these things. And so I think that's also a struggle of trying to figure out what is the best method, recognizing we're all different and we're all going to absorb information differently, and we all are going to absorb different actions differently. It's really hard to navigate that. But you can't go wrong by doing what's right. And I'm certainly not perfect at it. I make no claim to that. But I found it really fascinating back when the George Floyd murder became an issue, and it was so big in our country. I posted something on my social media, and the immediate reaction was, I think I lost a handful of followers, right? I noticed that right away. And I thought, wow, these people can't even hear that to absorb it. And that's what the problem is in this country, I think, right? So if people are so quick to shut it down and not even pay attention, that's what keeps us from progressing, I think, even more, as much as Dr. King would have liked us to 50, 60 years ago, right? So, but you still have to do it. And I will do my best to do it, and constantly checking myself if it's the right time for the mayor of Troy to say something. It's the right time for Ethan Baker, the citizen of Troy, the dad, the husband. When do we interject, and what role do I play in that process? But no harm in doing what's right, and what we usually know inside what the right thing is and what is the good and right thing. So we have to let our conscience be our guide in that sense a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my thoughts are in line with you, Mayor. Obviously, being an elected position, it's unique in the sense that you were elected for, to represent a group of individual, a community, basically. And you always have to be very cognizant of your role as an elected official and who you're representing, that it's not just my views, that I'm interjecting versus what is best for the community as a whole, and what you were elected and, and what you are trying to do and serve, basically. And so, sometimes the positions and the opinions that I may have as an individual, I really try to kind of really check myself and really think about it, and how, making sure that it's not influencing too much of my decision-making as in my elected role. With that being said, there are times, when issues come about, or events come about where you can't just stay silent, where you have to speak up, and you have to take a stand, and you have to take a side, and you have to take a position, and you can't just say, well, I don't know, and I think that, when those times come about, because you feel it weighs on you, it weighs on your conscience. And so, those are the times that, I think are important to take a stand and to speak up. But I think it's always that tough balance, though, being an elected versus maybe me as the individual and what my personal views are. And I try to really distinguish the two. But another thing, when you talk about silence, I've had in the wake of George Floyd, I had, people, allies, come to me and say, oh, Teresa, what is it that I can do? How can I be a better ally? And one thing that I say is, just speak up. You may be in spaces that I will never be. You may hear conversations I may never hear. But if you hear something that is not right, if you could just say something, and just make it clear that, I'm not going to be your safe space for, hatred or bigotry, and you don't have to be confrontational about it, but just make it clear, this isn't, my position. I don't agree with it, because I think some of that silence, a lot of people take that as complicity. And I think that has allowed so much stuff to perpetuate because people don't say anything. And so that, that's really, something that I would really, really hope that people could do is just to say something. Sometimes if you see something or hear something that is just not right.
I really appreciate those listening to all of those viewpoints. I find myself uniquely situated as a superintendent of the school district. I have a broad pulpit, if you will, my own pulpit, Pastor, here in the Troy School District. In that, what I say or what I don't say at times can be taken in a multitude of different ways. But for me, I've really tried to focus it on our mission as a school district, and it's ensuring learning for all, and really planting our flag in this notion of all. That if we really mean all, if we really mean all, that means we are focusing on what all of our learners, members of our school community need. And you can't be about all if you're not about equity, because the reality is we know we have individuals within our community that don't come from the same background. They don't have the same experiences. They don't have the same opportunities. And it's incumbent upon us to provide them those opportunities to be successful, attending to their well-being, making sure they have a sense of belonging. If we don't attend to those, there's no way we can help those all individuals within our community achieve the academic success that each and every one of them wants for our children. Every member of our community wants our children to be successful members of the larger community, because we all benefit from that. The more graduates we churn out from the Troy School District that stay here in Troy, that may go away to college, come back here to Troy, and are productive residents of this community, strengthen our community even further. The only way for us to do that is to understand that when we talk about equity, it's really about providing opportunities for everyone to meet their fullest potential, and that's where I have decided to focus my attention when I think about our mission of all meaning all. It's making sure that the decisions that we make are truly focused on all students. And I recognize that sometimes those messages have been misconstrued potentially or co-opted in different ways. But I know that we have a Board of Education here in the Troy School District who stands firmly behind the work that we're doing. In focusing on our mission of ensuring learning for all, and what all actually means here in the Troy School District. So I feel good, and I think our community should feel good about the fact that we're doing the right work. We're going to continue to focus on the right work, knowing that we have elected officials, knowing that we have members of the faith community behind us in that work. There is nothing that we as a school community cannot accomplish with knowing that we've got members like yourselves behind us, supporting us, and individuals like Cornelius who are helping to lead this work here in the Troy School District. So I thank all of you for being a part of this conversation. It's really been important. It is important for the members of our community to hear what we all have to say.
Yeah, thank you all so much for sharing your thoughts and for participating in a conversation. Like Dr. Macheski said, it's so important, not just because of the things that we talked about, but the way that we talked about it. I'm really hopeful that conversations like this can be a model for folks who may not all see situations the same way, that may not all interpret facts the same way, but still have an honor and respect toward one another and a common goal of doing what's best for the communities that we serve. And I believe that is 100% in keeping with the hopes and dreams of Dr. King. And I appreciate being able to put that into action today and to acknowledge that his dream was more than a dream. We are in this very moment making a reality. So thank you once again for your time today. There was so much thoughtfulness in the responses our Troy leaders gave, and we appreciate each of them for being willing to share in today's celebration. But they're not the only ones we want to hear from today. We want to hear from you too. We'd like all of our One Troy family members to use the QR code on the screen and share your thoughts with us. Our goal is to ensure learning for all. And part of how we're making Dr. King's dream a reality is by making sure all always means all. So take a moment to connect with us in our effort to extend high quality learning opportunities in ways that are equitable and accessible for all. We hope to hear from you. Thank you so much for celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. with us today. We hope you use what's left of this day to love, learn, and lead in ways that make his dream a reality.